Bonjour, good morning. Today we'll take up a new topic which is known as subject pronouns. Now, what is the function of a pronoun? Pro in Latin means for. Noun is noun. So any word which is used for a noun or any word which is used to replace a noun or any word which is used to substitute a noun is known as a pronoun. So what are subject pronouns? Subject normally is the person who does the action. For example, Jack talks or Helen sleeps. Helen and Jack are the subjects, and if we want to replace them, then we have to use what is known as a subject pronoun. Now, how many persons are there in a conversation? There are three persons in a conversation. The first person, the second person, and the third person. So who is the first person? The first person is always the speaker, the one who speaks. The second person is always the person who listens. And the third person is always the person or the object or the subject which is spoken about. For example, if I speak, then I am the speaker and I have to speak to someone who listens and you are listening. Therefore, you are the second person and you are the listener. And what I speak to you about, whether it is a dog or a cat or a human being or the subject or French or any abstract thing, anything which I speak to you about is known as the third person. Now, let us see all these subject pronouns in French. The first person singular in French is written as je, J-E or J apostrophe. And that means I in English. And this is the first person singular. The second person singular is tu. That means you. You singularly as an individual. This is the second person singular. The third person singular can be divided into the masculine and the feminine. The third person singular in French is written as il, and that will mean he or it. This is the third person singular masculine. The third person singular feminine is written in French as elle, E-L-L-E, elle, and that will mean she or it. Now you have to remember that only the third person can be divided into the masculine and the feminine. All other persons are deemed to be masculine because the masculine gender is very overpowering in French. So all the other persons are only masculine unless otherwise specified. Now, we continue with the subject pronouns. The first person plural or the plural of this je is nous, N-O-U-S, nous, and that will mean we. The second person plural or the plural of tu is vous, V-O-U-S, and that means you. Here it means you collectively as a class. Second person plural. The plural of il is ils. This is also pronounced il, and this means they. This is the third person plural masculine, and the third person plural feminine is elle, E-L-L-E-S, and this is the plural of E-L-L-E. This is also pronounced L, and this also means they. This is the third person plural feminine. Now let us see these subject pronouns in their singular and plural form. Now, you have je or J apostrophe, which means I, and the plural of je is nous, which means we. The second person singular is tu, which means you singularly as an individual, and the second person plural is vous. So, the plural of tu is vous, and that means you collectively as a class. Now, since both tu and vous means you, it can also be used out of respect. Now, tu is used when people of the same age speak among themselves. This is equivalent to the Tamil ni. And vu, on the other hand, is used also out of respect. When you speak to a superior or when you speak to an elder, you will use vu. And vu is the equivalent of the Tamil ninga. So besides being singular or plural, these subject pronouns are also used out of respect, especially the second person singular and plural. The third person singular is il or el, that means he, she or it. And the third person plural will be il or el, which means they. The plural of il or el is ils or elles, and il or el will mean they. Now, these subject pronouns are always connected to verbs. Now, verbs are of two categories, regular verbs and irregular verbs. Regular verbs are further divided into three categories. Those which end in er, those which end in ir, and those which end in re. Irregular verbs also end in er, ir, and re, but they cannot be classified as such. Therefore, you will have to learn irregular verbs by heart. Always irregular verbs must be learnt by heart. Now, every regular verb has two parts. One is the stem and the other is the root. Normally, the last two alphabets which the verb ends in is the root of the verb. What remains after cutting off the root of the verb will be the stem of the verb. Now, I will show you in a few examples how to remove the root and how to obtain the stem of the verb, because this is very important for the present tense, which we will be doing in the next chapter. The first example I have given you is the verb donner, D-O-N-N-E-R. Donner means to give, and donner is a full verb. Now, if we remove the ER, you have D-O-N-N, which is the stem of the verb, and ER will form the root of this verb. And this is an ER verb or verb of the first category. The second example I have given you as choisir. I have chosen this verb. Choisir means to choose, and choisir is the full verb. The full verb can also be known as the infinitive. Choisir also has two parts. After removing the IR, you will have CHOIS. So, CHOIS is the stem of the verb, IR is the root of the verb. This is the verb of the second category, IR verbs. Now, we go to the verb of the third category. I'll give you an example of a regular verb, vendre. Vendre means to sell, and vendre is the full verb, in which we can obtain, from which we can obtain the stem and the root. The stem of the verb vendre is V-E-N-D, that is after cutting off the R-E, and R-E is the root of the verb. So, by now, I hope you understand how to obtain the stem and the verb. I will redo this when we do the chapter on regular verbs in the present tense. Now, every verb, every tense will have four forms. In short, every sentence in English and in French will have four forms. The affirmative form, the negative form, the interrogative form, and the interrogative negative form. These are the four forms which every sentence will take. Now, what is the affirmative form? The affirmative form is a positive form. It comprises of saying or answering yes to a question. For example, if I say, do you give? You will say, yes, I give. So, how is the affirmative form formed? If you put the subject pronoun before the conjugated form of the verb, you will get what is known as the affirmative form. So, it is very easy. You take these subject pronouns which are written here, je, tu, il, elle, nous, vous, il, elle, and if you write these subject pronouns first and you write the verb immediately after the subject pronoun, then you will get the affirmative form. Now, what is the negative form? The negative form is answering no to a question. Suppose I ask you, do you give? Then you will say, no, I do not give. This is the negative form. So, how do we form the negative form in French? We first write down the subject pronoun, that is je, tu, il, elle, and all that. Then we put ne or n apostrophe before the conjugated form of the verb, and then we follow that with pas. Now, ne by itself and pas by itself will not have any meaning. Both together will mean not. So, subject pronoun plus ne or n apostrophe plus the conjugated form of the verb plus pa will be the negative form. The third form is the interrogative form. So, what is the interrogative form? The interrogative form comprises of asking a positive question. Do you give? Do they play? Have they gone out? These are interrogative forms. So, the interrogative form comprises of placing the verb before the subject pronoun and separating the verb and the subject pronoun with a hyphen. You put a dash between the verb and the subject pronoun and follow that sentence with a question mark. So this is the interrogative form. The fourth form is the interrogative negative form. And how do we form this? And what is the interrogative negative form first? The interrogative negative form comprises of asking a negative question. Have they not all gone out? Have they not played? Are you not going out? Are you not studying? All these are negative questions. So how do we form it? We add n or n apostrophe before the verb, put a hyphen, put the subject pronoun after it, and follow it by pa and a question mark. You will get the interrogative negative form. In short, the interrogative negative form is nothing but placing ne or n apostrophe before the interrogative form and placing pa, that is pas, after the interrogative form and following it with a question mark. So I hope from this simple explanation you would have understood subject pronouns, categories of verbs, and also forms of sentences. Merci.